council.
Mr. Mayor, we're ready if you are.
Yeah, I guess skeleton crew time. For your there's 3 minutes later. Okay. So I'll go ahead and call our special meeting to order. Rise with the flag of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
So set the stage with a little bit. Really about is it's a formal meeting, obviously special meeting, but it's really to just make sure we boards and that's a, you guys know it's down here. You go up there.
Yeah, but the people walking around building other meetings.
Glad you're here. So I decided to order the purpose of this meeting is to just get obviously the town council, finance, police commission. This information did go out to the union board and to all the officers. And we have a scheduled negotiation next week, the union board with our town groups, commission, the finance member, itself. That's scheduled next week. That will be a negotiation. This is not, I'm going to say this many times tonight. This is not a negotiation. Offer on the table. The form that was sent to all of you, framework that's been developed over many months, really going back to the beginning of this year, probably. And I'm going to just go back a little bit and set the stage of how we got here. So everybody, there seems to be a lot of rumors, a lot of misinformation on all sides. So like, to get us all together, come to the police commission, to the council, to the board of finance, on the same page. And then also tonight, we would have an opportunity with our actuaries, here, also some of us here that have been talking time, and our labor council, our town attorney, with any questions, general questions, obviously there's nothing specific on this, but anyway, so going back maybe Steve get home probably, I don't know, mid last year maybe, or we talked a long time. Yeah, so last year, and we all recognized, the police commission recognized that we needed to do something better for our police departments. So the initial plan is a very nice plan. Many of us on that in that discussion early on of enhanced two different plans. Yeah, no, going way back, obviously, what is the pension plan? 15 years ago, I did it, something like that, right? And then they were grandfathered in that pension plan. That's the pension plan that not only had the choice of annuity, benefit, payout every month, or you could lump sum. Most of the officers that are in that plan, many have now retired. They took lump sum, left the town in some precarious situation because past councils and people running the town did not fund it very much at all. So that was a big problem, but we got through that. I believe there's only 4 officers left, I think, right? The one town employee. They just lost it. But something like that. We got about 4 people left, right, that could take advantage of it. So once that ended, so they started a 401k. And then there was a couple different generations of the 401k. So the officers went 2 different plans. We united that I think, earlier this year, right?
Yes.
Put them all in the same
And,
one.
well received,
Yeah.
and we're very appreciative for that interim stuff.
Yeah, and then we had a plan for an enhanced 401k, which was pretty attractive, this 401k, in fact, very attractive. I don't think any of us ever probably heard of that attractive plan, but you know, it didn't work. It really, negotiations just wasn't what the PD was looking for. And of course, you know, what happened over the last year and a half. And prior to that, even, it's been a very difficult environment, as we know. But it was obvious, the handwriting was on the wall. We needed to go through the defined benefit plan back to a pension basically. All the towns around us, I'm just going to use one as an example. Rocky Hill, I know them pretty well. I don't the officers there. I talk to them frequently. They did the same thing. They got rid of their pension. There was folks grandfathered in, went to a 401k. I believe 2 years ago they went back to a pension plan, much like they had the same situation, and many departments that are, I don't think there's many left that are 401ks. Most have gone back to the defined benefit plan, because unfortunately now, as we know, many different reasons, difficult to recruit. We're all fighting for the same candidates. Candidate list is not what it used to be. I think years ago when I applied to state police, there was 1,000 people that took the test. Now I don't know what they're a couple hundred, 100, I don't know. You know, we've been lucky in Berlin, we've had folks in our town, but what kind of brought this, you know, is the chief brought this. Got a lot of experience in Danbury. Steve was pretty familiar with a lot of this. It was obvious that from the candidate list really late last year, the top 2 right on the list, if I remember correctly, you're telling me, chief, the question was, you guys have a pension plan? No, they were going somewhere else. So, I mean, and that's just one, example of difficulty we're having. So the discussion turned early this year to compliance benefit. So with our actuaries, and obviously Roche, Kevin, and kind of team effort with the union, we had some discussions. We broke off for a little bit this summer. We had to get some more numbers and different things, obviously, because it's 401k plan. They have to buy into the pension plan. And so we had to get some numbers what the buy-ins would be, and we kind of got to most of that. Where we stand now is we've had 3 meetings with the town group without the union board or president. They're going to get us on the same. Myself, Sal, Jerry, finance, Dave Rogan, Steve. We've been in meetings to get together, and obviously before these recent meetings, we had met with the union and we had a framework we're working with, which is really what you're looking at now. So if you look at the one pager, again, just for legal purposes, right? This is just a discussion. It's not an offer. It's not anything. No one's decided anything. No one's finished with negotiations. It's not a negotiation. That will begin again next Thursday with the town group, along with the board. But if you look at the left side, first of all, right, it's kind of this is what we're negotiating, right? What the potential plan benefit's going to be, and what the contributions will be from the town and from the officers that they buy in. So this is, and we didn't just pull this out of the air. This is for months of talking with them, what they want, what they're looking for, what the town's willing to agree to. And we haven't agreed on any of this, right? We just had a discussion. And again, The recent 3 meetings have been 3 of us. I mean, it's been the town group without the union, but we had a lot of discussion to kind of get to this framework. So that is where we would go next. We would go to every one of these lines on here. We have to go through and negotiate and agree on, obviously, right? And that's where we're headed. I think, though, I believe we're pretty close. Certainly put a lot of time and effort in it. Need is tremendous. We've had some officers leave recently to go to other departments. And so we're going to get it done. And I know we had some initial just discussions on the council. We just haven't probably been doing this with finance knows, obviously. Just to get us all up to date where we're at. That's really what this is for. The union members, they all did get a copy of this. Was hoping he would be here, but they rather wait until we start again with their board, which is fine. It was made clear, though, hopefully, that this is not what we're offering. This is just the framework that we're dealing with. Can't be more clear on that. This is not the offer. So, it's upset, but I think it was important to get folks on board just to know what we are negotiating.
Mayor,
Yes,
we can post the slide on Kevin has it all prepared.
sure.
So if you want him to bring it
Yes,
up,
yes,
But Kevin's gonna go through it.
yes, he's gonna go through it in a
So-
moment. So anyway, that's kind of the history.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure we're kind of up to date. Yeah, and we'll have a little presentation now, but Roach, I know you wanted to make.
Actually, we pretty much covered
Okay.
everything, so just a couple of items
Yeah.
so that people know who they are, in addition to Board of Finance,
Yeah.
Police Commission, and council members. We have Richard from Hook and Holcomb and Laura Hanson is on the Zoom call. These are the town actuaries, so they're available to answer any questions you may have. We also have Duncan Forsyth, Halloran Sage, the town's labor council. So the experts are here. They were part of this process. So most of you, other than the ad hoc group, this is the first time you're seeing this or hearing about this. So all this is new to you. So I encourage you to ask questions, pick our brain, get comfortable with this, because you're gonna be asked one day to vote on it, and you need to understand really what you're voting on. So with that,
Yes, and just please, just, if you hear rumors in town, if you hear people talking, saying wrong things after tonight, you know what the progress has been, which is tremendous. And we put in a lot of time on this, a lot of hard work is going in to get this far. We're probably pretty close, but anyway, yes, without further ado, let's have.
Kevin, if you want
have
to
it go through the sheet.
upload the documents, I'll share the document. Everybody has copies, but it'd be good to share that with the group.
Can everybody see?
Yep, and you had the same thing with you. Over to you, Kevin. Thank you.
Okay. Well, as the mayor said, there's 2 sections to this plan. The first is the benefits of the plan. So what would be offered to officers in the plan? The second section is the contribution type. And that's really about what the officers would be expected to contribute and then how that would affect the town's contribution. So quickly going through the benefit area, the payout percentage in this discussion is 2%. That would be 2% of base wages only. So it would not include overtime pay, extra duty pay, longevity, anything else someone might earn as an officer. And it would be based on the final average 3-year earnings. So the average of their last 3 years of earnings. The maximum payout would be 50% of those earnings or 25 years of service. Currently, the closed defined benefit plan has a lump sum option, which is at the discretion of the retiring officer. This new plan would not include that. That has presented a substantial cash flow challenge to the town over the last few years in particular. from a cost of living adjustment, so an automatic cost of living adjustment. The proposal is not to have an automatic cost of living adjustment in the defined benefit plan. And finally, vesting. So because this plan would be converting existing DC members over to DB, there would be a brief period of time, shorter than going forward, where members would need to participate in the DB plan in order to qualify for the benefits. So current active members at the time the plan is introduced would need to work for 5 years to vest in the DB plan. That would allow the town, if necessary, to contribute additional money and spread that cost out over 5 years rather than having to immediately infuse a substantial amount of money, if necessary, into the plan. It also allows the town, through town and employee contributions, to begin to build up some assets before we move into the payout phase. For any new employees, so any officers who are not currently with the Berlin Police Department at the time of signing, the go forward vesting period would be 10 years. And that's really based upon the premise of trying to attract and retain employees. That's an attempt, a major goal of this. And so that is hence the vesting portion. As far as how to fund this, so I'll step back first and just say more broadly, the defined benefit plan, by the nature of its name, we're committing to a benefit. Today, we commit to contributing a certain amount of money each year, and how each officer's account grows or does not is really indicative of investment choices and, of course, participation, making the contributions, and then what the match would be for on behalf of the town. Under this plan, anything that the employee does not contribute and that earnings do not yield has to be made up by the town. So proposed employee contribution would be 7% for current active employees at the time it's signed. Anybody new would be an 8% contribution of pay. There is the initial buy-in. That would be existing employees who wish to convert from the defined contribution plan to the defined benefit plan. They would have 60 days from the date of signing to make that election. If they don't elect to join, they have every option of remaining in the defined contribution plan. And after the 60 days, the window would close for existing officers, and those who choose not to move would remain in the defined contribution plan. If they choose to buy in, first they would have to exhaust all of their individual 401 plan assets. To be clear, any other retirement money like a 457 or a Roth contribution that they made is excluded from this. The town would offer a subsidy to bring everybody up to the opportunity to buy in after any individual has exhausted his or her assets to meet his or her buy-in requirement. One officer would not subsidize another, but each one would have to, if necessary, exhaust their assets before the subsidy would kick in. Anything that is left over after the buy-in would remain in the 401 plan and would remain the officer's defined contribution amount. The proposal is to use an equal buy-in. So the actuaries can determine what the liability would be and what the buy-in that is necessary would be for each individual officer. We took that, divided by the total number of years of the roster being used, and determined what it costs for an equal buy-in, regardless of demographics, years of service, rank, et cetera, and determined what an actual annual buy-in amount would be. And that's where the equal buy-in would come into play. There's no cap on the number of years that someone could buy in. You have existing officers who have 20 or more years of service, and they could, in principle, rewrite their retirement program from a defined contribution to a defined benefit plan. For future buy-in, which would be officers who join the Berlin Police Department after the program is signed, they would have an opportunity to buy their prior officer experience, again, using the equal buy-in annual amount. However, they would be capped at buying in 5 years. This would limit the ongoing exposure to taxpayers. And then the last piece at the bottom, the town is looking or discussing to make this move and wants to make sure that it has an opportunity to remain in place for a period of time to affect the change that is desired. And so we'd look to have the plan in place without renegotiating for 10 years from the date of signing. Those are the broad pieces. There are obviously a lot of details that go into a defined benefit pension plan that would be worked through later on, but these are the big pieces of the plan. With that, I'll pause for questions or comments from anybody.
Kevin, this is George Miller. I just had a question or comment on the payout percentage. Ideally, most times, probably 99% of the time, your final 3 years average would probably be the max. But if you thought about a situation where the last year you go out on disability or you go out on workman's comp, I've seen other plans where they do something like 3 out of the highest spot, 3 year, take the 3 highest out of a 5-year period. So you can kind of mitigate those things. You may have those last 3 years an off year for some reason. And you penalizing people here.
And that's definitely an option. I mean, the town and the police can certainly design that in the way that's best suited.
It would probably, all things considered, nothing happens, it's not going to be higher more than likely than the last 3 years. So there's a little downside, but you could be penalizing something.
Yep.
I guess the other question I had that I don't see is there, I'm not sure how this works given they're contributing. Is this a guaranteed payout if they were to pass away? Spousal benefit, guaranteed, or how does that all work in that? Given that they're paying into it.
Yeah, those were items that the group decided to table at this point. Those certainly would have to be worked through, whether there's a disability element. If somebody were to pass away on duty, off duty, the plan specific, this plan would have to go through those elements. But the intent at this point was to put the big broad elements out and try to get an agreement or an understanding from folks on the big elements, but you're absolutely right. Those pieces, especially unfortunately with the line of work that we're talking about, are critical.
So my last question would be, sure, the objective is to be competitive with surrounding towns and be able, how does this hold up to what other towns have done, are doing? Is it on par? Is it lacking? Because if you do this and it's not at least on par, or if it's significantly lacking, it's not going to buy you anything. So how much research has been done on that?
Done research, and a couple of the departments people go into it. The Sears plan, that's the state plan. With that, really Rocky Hill. But again, we're not done. We're not, this is not any kind of final agreement offer. It's just a framework, so we all kind of understand where we're at. Still negotiation done. I suspect it will look a little bit different than this. Yeah, no, we're looking at the other town. Right. So yeah. That element, well, it's a great PD, it's a great town to work in, you know that. This is really a very, very important part of the town.
They're close. They're close. I mean, there's some towns that don't have COLA, there's some towns that have COLA. So in some cases, we're very close with that, but again, starting from.
One of the things you hear all the time is, maybe this is the state, I don't even know if this is true, but I mean, this overtime versus base wages, and
Well, it's
police, state troopers working up team hours of overtime their last 3 years and.
Well, this plan, the way it looks to me, is written so that you can't do that.
No, I know, so
My
but is that
problem
a
with this plan
big
then is-
competitive disadvantage?
Yeah,
That's-
it's, they should be extending out that 25 years to 30 years, 2%. So you can retire at 60%. The other problem I have with this one is no lump sum payout, which we know is a problem on our other plan. But the reason it was a problem was because there was no death benefit. So if you die a year after you retire, your family, your spouse got nothing. And we're doing the same thing here, but we're saying you're gonna get nothing and you're not even gonna get a lump sum. So there's one of my concerns there too with this.
Just remember, we're not doing anything yet.
No, I understand, but I mean, this is the time to talk about it.
Yes. Oh, yeah, just. it's
Let's
we wanna
throw
get
these
the
ideas
thought,
out.
so we go back to the negotiations, we'll have.
This is, George, this is one piece, we looked at 12 maybe departments around here, but not just their retirement things, their salaries
Overall.
and other things. So this is just a piece of what we have to do to stay competitive. And there's a lot, there's no two town pension. We can't compete with the state. We never will. That's a whole different region. But that's not where we're losing employees to either, applicants or existing people. We're losing them to other municipalities. So we have to look at the whole thing. The purpose of this group is the retirement piece. But some towns have, I'd say, a little more bare bones retirement. They might have $10,000, $15,000 higher base salary. So an applicant's going to make, factor in a lot of things when they come here. But as Mark said, we have a very rapidly shrinking pool of recruits that we're all going after. This is like when I tried to hire programmers during Y2K, the market just disappeared. So we have to be competitive on a lot of fronts. And but this is certainly a cornerstone. I'm happy to see that we would put a 10-year brick wall around this thing, because one thing we have to do for our credibility, and in 10 or 15 years, very few of us will be involved in this, to be honest. So I'm sure no one that put the original police pension in thought that they would have to pull the plug on it. And then when they replaced that with a pretty good 401k, people that did that didn't really think within 5 or 6 years they'd have to downgrade that 401k. So we want to make this thing as bulletproof as we can, and to do that we have to be realistic and the whole benefit pack. This is a piece of it. So,
I think we should enshrine this in an ordinance too, that it must be funded.
absolutely.
Even to the point of if the town doesn't fund it, there's a penalty.
No problem with that. You're making a commitment to people.
Yes, and then the town would have to vote, the townspeople would have to vote to not fund it. So if we get it in an ordinance, I think that's gonna help a lot.
Kevin, I have a question for you. Just so I understand on the buy-in. So the town is at least initially proposing to level set everybody. So if we have 15-year people who did great in their 401k and some that did horrible, the town is gonna level all those things off for everybody. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, the town would subsidize once each individual under their circumstances has exhausted their 401 assets up to the point necessary. So if somebody's done very well, so let's just say they needed $300,000 to buy into the plan and they have 400,000, that extra 100,000 would stay with them in the 401 plan and they can invest however they wish. Similar person needs
We need to
300,000.
keep that plan active.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't continue to match.
No.
Contribute.
No. No, the assets would just be frozen at that point in the DC.
All right, thank you.
And then, but if somebody had 250,000 in assets and needed 300, then once they've exhausted their 250,000, the town would be, is discussing subsidizing that $50,000 difference.
So, question on that, if they're short on their contribution due to maybe taking out a loan on their 401k, that would be, I would assume that would be an exception where the town wouldn't fund it.
The DC, the 401 plan that the town offers does not allow for loans.
Okay, so I know a lot do, okay.
Yep.
Do we know what the potential cost to the town would be any estimate?
Well, I'd rather not go there because we don't have any kind of agreement. I don't think it's smart tonight to get into specifics on anything here because it's not, we are in negotiation. It's not a negotiation. They're continuing them, gotta be with the board. And so, yeah, I don't think that's, because maybe it doesn't even end, you know, it could end up different. That piece of it, we don't know. It's just kind of a framework that we're working in. But, you know, we have discussed these parts with the union, obviously, we're not like way out in left field. It's not solidified yet.
One question, if I may. What are the other pensions that we've looked at in terms of the cost of living? We're not looking to do that here. What are some of the other ones doing? Is there a certain 1%, 2%?
Well, like Rocky Hill, Newington have no cost. But they have, Steve mentioned, like the most pay is higher. And so there's some other traders, I think they have a higher percentage in their how much percentage they take away to things years. I don't remember.
Middletown has 3%.
They're in, so the, but Middletown said they're in Seymour, so they're in the state plan. I'm pretty sure they are. No, they're not. Southington, right?
Something.
Something.
Yeah.
Cromwell.
No, Cromwell. Okay, yeah. Seymour's is a little bit different state plan. But
So the 3 pound that we looked without seeing was 2 had no callers, like 1 had no call.
And that was at 3%, you said.
And it says in here no automatic, so I don't know if that was something that would be looked at annually outside of an automatic or not.
well,
It would be not.
I mean, there are different ways to, as we talk to continue to talk about COLAs, is obviously COLAs are based on consumer price index. There's many different formulas for the
Oh, yeah.
COLA, right?
Yep.
As you know. we don't-
The social security one that you got.
Well,
Yeah, it's just because
that's
it's like
why,
no automatic, I didn't know if there was enough stipulation in this.
yeah,
That's what
I
we were
mean,
looking at.
yeah, I mean, it's just many different iterations we could come up with the COLA. And again, subject to our future thought. Again, just because it says, just for the officers, I wish you could hear this, but they'll get it, that just because it says no COLA here, or whatever it says on the right side, it's, does not mean that it's final.
Right.
Yeah. right.
No, I just didn't know because it said no automatic if there was anything else that was being discussed.
Yeah, so, now we got to talk about all of this, all of this is on the table. It's not worked out the final plan. Like we do compromise, right? One side wants all this, one side wants this, hopefully we can meet in the middle and get a good plan and keep our meeting vibrant.
Sandy, one of the things we can do is, even if we have it where there's no automatic COLA, we can put language in this that says, in an unusual year, whatever governing board we have looking over this, like, might not do for the last 10 years when inflation was 2% or something, we
Right.
get an 8 or double-digit year. The board could convene and do a one-time COLA, and that doesn't make it automatic, but it adjusts everybody, and that would certainly be an exception. It would have to be,
Yeah.
unusual economic times, but that kind of safety valve could be in there, and I probably recommend that if we started off with a 0, that we had a mechanism.
No, that's what we're here.
My husband's in the business. So
That's what I'm here for. That's great. These are great questions.
My last thing I'd like to put out there as a thought is that we have some older officers and we have a 5-year before you can actually partake in a DB plan. So that, I mean, to me, that's going to be tough for some older officers to work that 5 years. Should we do some sort of a carve out for any officer over, pick an age, 58, 60 years old, doesn't have to do the 5 years and you can still buy his back retirement?
We've had some offline conversations with that. I'm a little hesitant to say it right now, but that would require, that would probably be in the union the contract negotiation next year. Like, I'll say one of the things that I'm proposing is we have a mandatory retirement age of 65. we've had policemen before that worked there 67, 68 years old. I think that's crazy. So, you know, what that looked like, if someone in 3 years hits that 65 thing, I would recommend that they become vested and they're allowed to retire. Now, we would never hire a 60-year-old guy, so but for that demographic in our census that's over 57 or 58 or something, this may not make a lot of sense right like that, unless you can add something in there to accommodate that. It's clearly a one-time exception that would be spread over 3, 4, 5 years as those guys hit that age, if the union even agrees to it. I don't know if they will. But I think that would address that demographic of the department.
You get the union contract up next year, right?
Yeah, I think that
Yes.
Up next year, right?
that chit chat starts right after the first of the year.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think so.
So, hence, with that in mind, you know, my goal would be. We've done a lot already, and we, you know, we'll see how we go in the next couple of meetings with the group as a union, and I would like to get this wrapped up if possible before the union.
We could get a logical, sustainable plan in there, and everyone's good, both sides are gonna have to come before the end of the year. I think it would be great, because it's almost impossible to keep this thing out of the union negotiation, and then it could go on all next year, and
Agreed.
I think it's not a good outcome for anybody. That's,
No, I'm with you. We gotta do it. We've spent a lot of time on it, and we're gonna spend some more in the next few weeks, and I think it's doable. You know, based upon parts and what we down to. I mean, again, this framework was just pull out of the air. We looked at the other towns and discussed that their union reps, the president. So, yeah, I think it's possible.
Is there, and I know, again, this is just talk, so, but is there a way we can put something in there, something in place regarding checks and balances so that administrations aren't able to kind of play with assumed rates of return, so we don't underfund the pension? It's kind of been happening.
I think that's the ordinance.
We can do that through ordinance.
The ordinance plan to cover that.
Because you know, that's a concern.
something similar on that proposed charter.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
But because that's an actually unit number, you want Rich to comment on it, because we will be getting independent validation for that, not the town staff, that's on calculate.
Yeah, for,
Each year, what the funding number is.
oh, yeah, right. I mean, but I just think we get into specific numbers.
Okay, well, she asked, that's why.
Yeah, no, that's.
I just want to make sure there's some kind of checks and balance, so
Yeah.
you can't play with that
that-
assumed amount, so this way we
Yes.
fund what's needed, not, gee, oh, it's gonna be a 9% check, yeah, it's not, you know, and then run into issues.
That,
You know,
That's our concern. I mean, that we've all just been through that for the last 6 years. We saw what happened when the pension wasn't funded.
Right.
And
I just
we
wanna make sure it doesn't
we don't
happen
want to leave a
again.
legacy for the town. Yeah, that's.
you can assume whatever number you want, but each year you have to come up with the actual number for the liability. You can assume 12%, but if you get 0 or -2, you have a bigger number. Assumption really does not matter in this for planning purposes, but in that to the funding time, based on actual performance for that year.
Yeah, the number every year. I mean, much like we have a number with 401k, it's a little bit different, but still, it's a number, right?
Mayor, may I make a comment
Yes, absolutely.
on that part? The number that's assumed is actually, it's a discussion actually that I typically, since I've been here, it's a conversation I have with Rich and Laura, or the actuaries. I've been accused of a lot of things, but not being conservative enough is typically not one of them. I would say, you know, this is not something that is negotiated. This is not something that's for anybody who's involved with the plan. That is a management estimate or management assumption. And it is also discussed with the actuaries to determine if it's reasonable, given what we're seeing, not just in the marketplace, but with our investment portfolio. As part of the annual reporting that the actuaries do, they're receiving feedback on the investment selection and investment performance from our advisors at Fiducian, who are independent of the town. So if we were to try to go dramatically off from what has been seen and what has been provided independently, we do have some checks there as well. But typically, finance, working with the actuaries, are not going to be your most financially aggressive people by nature. And again, it's not negotiated. It's not between the town and the union or anything. That is a town assumption.
Yeah, no, I get that, but I still just, I don't think we're far now. I don't think we can just even go into specifics in this meeting.
Yeah, we don't really have a plan yet. We don't even know what the
No.
final plan is.
That-
So can't pick numbers of that.
No, that's what I want to do. It's very-
Just wanna make sure that-
Oh, yeah,
So,
and that was-
I don't care about the specifics
Yeah,
at this point, I get that.
Yeah, I mean, from a board of finance standpoint, we're interested in the forecast also, because I'm not looking at just the current year. We're interested in saying, we're gonna commit dollars to the taxpayers that are going down the road, so we definitely interested in what that forecast looks like. And so we can understand the bigger impact of the funds, so that's the plan ahead.
And last time we didn't have board of finance. So I think that's good. Kevin, who did you say the advisor on the plan was that we used?
Fiducian,
Okay,
they were formerly known as FIA.
oh, okay,
They merged with a firm out of
yeah,
Chicago,
that was familiar. Okay.
rebranded Fiducian.
So we think, folks, what else? Yeah.
I operate a small business and my accountant and attorney tell me I can't offer any benefit. I don't offer to all the employees. Can the town exclude other employees from this? Pension?
Yes. Yes. There are a number of towns that offer a DB plan to their public safety officials. So if we were to have a paid fire department, I would imagine that if that does arise in the future, they would be looking for something similar. There are a number of towns who offer a DB plan to just public safety, or maybe one other unit, and offer defined contribution to others.
So we can legally exclude the employees who want to exclude.
We could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a problem. I understand why we need to do it for sleep. I know in a small business, I've been told 100 times, different rules.
I think the only other thing I would want to say is, I understand where Tim was coming from as far as saying about the lump sum option. I do think that if we can avoid a lump sum, I think it's better for the town. However, we do think during the negotiations or while that's going on, that yes, there should be some type of death benefit policy there. And I think if we can work that in, then I don't think there's a problem per se with the lump sum pay, because I think that helps protect the town a little bit.
Anything wrong? Yeah.
No, I was thinking about a question that Sandy asked. Maybe 2-3 weeks ago, we did a quick survey. I asked CCM, the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, to quickly survey. They sent a survey out, 70 towns responded. Of which, it so happens, 70% of them have a DB plan. And your question about the COLA, it varies from 0 to about 2.8%, just the ones who responded. So, I mean, that's just out there. But again, you can't just look at the COLA by itself. Look at all of the other pieces, the 3 highest, the 3 last year's, all of these other variables and parameters that are in there. So if you ask the question, that's the question you could find out.
Cheap. And extensive experience in this area.
Yeah, this is a starting point. I mean, you've been at it for almost 2 years. And I do think that some of the stuff that was brought out wasn't discussed in our planning or policy meetings, but you know, my experience has been if you get your nose under the tent and get something going down the road, you're gonna wanna make changes. If you do that 10 years out, you probably won't be doing it, but somebody else will be looking at these. Because these are cyclic. We've seen the cycle. I've been doing this for 40 years this year, and defined contribution, defined benefit, defined contribution. We're always reinventing the wheel. I did want to add one thing though. I know you earlier, Ray said about last year, how I had people come in, my top candidates, and said, oh, you don't have a pension plan. You don't have to look at last year, you can look at yesterday and you can look at last week. Because I've had 2 sets of chiefs interviews, interviews right now, trying to fill a couple slots. And the types of candidates that we want to bring in for the chiefs, we want to bring the best candidates in at the top of the scoring chain, at the top of the oral chain. Also, when I was a young officer, very few people had college. We're seeing people with master's degrees coming in for these interviews. And a 22 or a 23-year-old person sitting there and saying, okay, what's my end game at age 60 or 65? They're thinking that far down. A lot of you know I teach 2 universities. My classes, they ask me these questions all the time. That's the target market that we're going after. So every interview I've done so far in the past 2 weeks, 2 different days, I've had candidates come in that we made conditional offers to, so we can start the backgrounds. And they're on like 5 or 6 different department lists, all doing backgrounds. We're all doing backgrounds on the same people at the same time. Today we were sharing some of our polygraphs because they share with us, we share with them, so we don't have to spend more money on polygraphs, the psychologicals. That pie is very small, and the slices keep getting smaller. After last week, I had our #1 candidate came in, decided, you know what, I don't want to be a cop anymore. He sat down with his young wife from locally, just said, after what happened in Bristol, the job's too dangerous. And this is somebody who went and got a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, a master's degree in justice and law. Their career goal was set. It's hard when a 25-year-old says, I can't do this, I don't know what to do. And that's the conversations that I'm having with some of our candidates. And it's just amazing. When I was a young officer, I never been asked about a pension. I was just happy to get the job. And I tested with thousands of people in civil service. We don't have that here. We use Police Act. So people elect, just so you understand the process here. They do a general application and they pick the agencies that they want to look at them. So we're not getting 1,000 applicants. We're not even getting 100. We're in the 80, 70 range, of which about 75% get wiped out because the panels just, there's so many things going against us. Pot smoking, smoking marijuana. Oh, geez, I didn't know I couldn't smoke marijuana. I decided I could use it, but I started to hear about it. But that's the way it is. Yeah, right. It's like you can't have a gun because the federal law says that. How long ago did you do this? Well, it was last week. Well, they always tell me, it was a long time ago. What was that? Oh, a month ago. A long time for me is 40 years now. So we really struggle if a candidate comes in, and I've been saying this publicly for almost a year now, not just in Berlin, but when I speak elsewhere too. It's almost at the point in Connecticut where police applicants need to have managers, like sports athletes, and get the best deal possible, because you're going to give up a lot. We see how pro football is. Well, our cops are getting to be the same way, and that's a problem. It's a problem for small towns. How do we do that? So we're trying to do a lot of things. As Steve said, it's not just this. This is the linchpin. We also have to offer advancement. We have to offer additional training. A lot of training is unfunded, by the way. We have a lot of parts. Somebody will come in and say, hey, I saw you have canines. You have a pension plan? Because I really want to be a canine officer in my career. And you got dogs. And the other agency said they're not doing dogs anymore, but they have a pension. And that's the conversations I'm having. Well, I'll get you a damn dog. If I gotta get you a poodle, I need people that can work. So this is a good point. I know that the union's gonna have counters. I would expect it. I've been on this before.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's great. We don't have a choice if we want to have a
police force.
Yeah, listen, if I wasn't as old as I am, I'd go to Rocky Hill.
What else? Anything? Anybody else? No. We good? So anything else we can add to? Good, good, pretty good?
The only thing I
Yes.
would add is to
Yes.
come back to the beginning of what we said. I always ask the question, why are we doing this? And why to attract and retain police officers, right? So as we go through the negotiations and all of that, we have to think about aligning the plan to do that. Now, this is not an outcome, people have been here for 30 years or 40 years. That's not what we're trying to retain, right? We're trying to keep people, attract people, you have a mix, you said that many times.
Mhm.
You don't want transfers coming in after 20, 30 years, you can build a force on that, but how do you get the younger folks to come in and stay? May I ask a question from, you said that we don't pick, they pick us, that they apply to a central location and. then-
Yeah, so we use,
It's like a
sort of,
college app,
yeah, well, police
like
that,
a common app.
Exactly, that's what I want to ask.
yeah.
So colleges, university, I'm a little bit familiar with that, do certain things to make you attractive, right?
Correct.
So other than the pension, what are other things that you can do so that when they go, we already think.
Well, we already are. So you know how the Common App was,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, so
Yeah.
you flag certain things, so we flag certain things, right? We're veteran friendly, we're diversity friendly. I mentioned the canines, we have canines, I know a lot of police departments getting away from that, I actually like canines, I'm probably old school in that respect. They look at things like what other activities, your dive team, your peer support, DARE, those are in career enhancing things that some people, listen, most people don't go into law enforcement because they're under the assumption they're gonna make $1 million a year. So they look for things that make them happy in their job. And everybody knows the old adage, if you enjoy your job, it's not work. So this job, when nothing's going wrong, you enjoy it. And some people are actually junkies on the ones that when things go wrong, they like it. But the idea is to offer something to attract them. So what are we looking at? We're looking at different things like, you know, for a long time here, we call the state police for major crimes. Well, I just started a crime scene technician program because we know the state police, they got about 3 years experience on an average trooper. They come out to the major crime scene and they're reading the book, and we had that happen here this year. So we've got officers here 5 to 10 years. We just said, okay, listen, we're gonna invest this training. You're gonna start handling the major crimes. But when you're an acting detective or you're a supervisor, that's a job satisfaction role. So if they're doing it here and we're offering that training, we need to retain it. Remember what I said, the average officer takes a year to make, and it's cost us $100,000. So when that first week I was on a job, or the second week I was on a job here, and the guy was just finishing his FTO and came in and said, Chief, I quit. We just lost $100,000 in a year. And you can't replace that like next week. So those, it's little things too, you know, it's not just the big, but this is the linchpin. This really is the linchpin. And then we throw a couple other things out there. How about a simple thing? And then the world's probably listening to me, but you look at the cars out there, our cars are well maintained. They're not driving around and beat up wrecks like you see in the bigger cities like where I came from. That is a job thing. I get in the car and the car is clean. We maintain cars. People take pride and satisfaction. That's their office, by the way. Your patrol officer, that's their office. So as long as you have that, that's a plus. Those are in the plus factors. The negatives could be, you know, other little things. Where do we stand on our wage compared to other agencies? Steve already alluded to that. You know, maybe it's not always about the percentage of a COLA, because if you're getting a larger lump sum at the end, you know, you're getting a larger payment in because you added side jobs and stuff like that, all negotiable. All these things are negotiable, and they're not on this piece of paper, and they're not gonna be on this piece of paper until you figure out through negotiations where you wanna be with this. That's the key. So it's gotta be more, and that's the whole idea is, if the first thing they say is, hey, you have a pension, and we say no, and they move on, I can't sell them the other parts. And the young people today are all about looking at what they're gonna get down the road. And that's not just a police thing, it's in all employment. A lot of you are business people, you're in the industries, we're all trying to hire people. And then coming out of the COVID, coming out of, let me give you $1,200 checks for sitting home and all that. That has changed the ideology of the American worker, and we're fighting that right now in emergency services. That's really a problem for us. So we gotta be aggressive on this. It's not just about recruiting, it's about retention. You put $100,000 plus all the other training that's required. Every 3 years, you gotta go through different training, annual training. We're constantly investing in our people, our personnel. That's taxpayer money. When we lose somebody, we're losing a seasoned veteran that we need to retain. So when you guys are talking about the 15-year person and the 18-year person, they're just as important as that potential new hire. And it is a balancing act, and we've talked about this, it is a balancing.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. That's great. That's what we need to hear. We know that's a good point. We didn't bring that up, but the money loser, when you train the officer and they're here for years and they go, obviously. Have good to offset that. You're not worried about this might cost us a little bit.
Just to make it sound better, then we lose $100,000 the whole year after they're gone, making up for that guy.
There you go. Yeah,
So it doesn't-
it's a double
doesn't stop.
whammy there, yes.
Yeah. So we need more than a Band-Aid. Yes, that's what we need.
Yeah, of course. It's the world we live in. Okay, what do we think? Anything else? We good with everybody? Thank you so much for coming, sort of bring you out here. We have a lot of meetings, but it's that important that we're all kind of on the same page. And we'll get back to our negotiations. I thought a great discussion. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for keeping it on the front burner, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Yes.
Number one on the burner.
There's many burners, a lot of things.
I know. I'm not letting you walk away, I know.
So,
And we'll get a motion to adjourn.
we're gonna have a motion to adjourn. You have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. So moved. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Hereby adjourned. Thank you, both.
Thank you, Kevin, Laura.